The credit card statement was just lying there on the table, and for a second I thought I was seeing things. It was for a little over 25 grand. All these wedding deposits, a bunch of fancy flower stuff, and food for about 250 people. All of it was on the emergency card I gave my daughter, Elara, about 3 years back. You know, for things that really mattered. I ran my finger down the list of charges, each one hitting harder than the last. Whispering Pines Event Lodge, $10,700. Lily and Vine Florals, $5,085. Ocean View Catering, $7,800. I just couldn't believe it. My face got hot, and my hands started shaking as the truth of it all sunk in. My daughter had gone behind my back. The most important day of her life, and I wasn't going to be a part of it. No, she'd made sure of that. They didn't just leave me out. They wiped me from the whole picture. Sitting there, with the numbers all blurry, I knew it wasn't just about the money. Something colder and more serious was going on, and they were going to pay for what they did. The kitchen was too quiet. The kind of quiet where the wall clock ticking sounds like a drum in your skull. My coffee had been cold since sunrise. Outside, the late autumn light was all thin and pale, like the world was losing its color. I shoved the statement away, but it was still right there in my head, those sharp black numbers lined up like soldiers on a mission. And the mission was clear. Drain my account without a single phone call. This wasn't some mistake. Elara knew exactly what she was doing. And my son, Oliver, he had to have known, too. You don't book a place and a caterer for 250 people without him getting a clue. I stood up, mostly just to stop myself from shaking. My hands landed on the back of my old oak chair, the one Helen used to sit in, reading the newspaper. She'd know what to say. Helen had a way of cutting through the nonsense like a hot knife through butter. "Don't let them see you bleed, Williams," she'd say. "Not until you've figured out what you're going to do with the blood." The phone was sitting on the counter, the screen black, but it felt like it was glowing, just begging me to pick it up. I could call Elara right now. Demand an explanation. Demand my money back. But that's what they'd expect. Some big explosion of fatherly anger. If I've learned anything in 67 years, it's that the loudest guy in the room is usually the weakest. I sat back down and opened the statement again. This time I went line by line with a pen, circling the dates and charges. They started booking stuff about 3 months ago. That meant they'd been planning this for a while, making sure my name didn't end up on the guest list. I was halfway through the page when my phone buzzed. It was Oliver. I let it ring twice before I answered. "Yeah. Hey, Dad." His voice was all casual, the way he sounds when he wants something. "You free this weekend? Thought we could all get dinner." "All?" I said, my voice flat. "Yeah, you know, me, Elara, a few other people. Kind of a pre-wedding thing." "Pre-wedding," I repeated. "Sounds expensive." There was a pause. Yeah. Well, you know how weddings are." "I do now." Silence. Just the faint sound of the phone line. "Dad, what's going on?" he finally asked. "What's going on is I've been looking at my credit card bill," I said, my voice steady. "And unless there's another Williams family out there throwing a big party at Whispering Pines, I think we have a problem." "Look, it's not what you think." "Oh, it's exactly what I think." Another pause, longer this time, then a sigh. "Elara was going to tell you. We wanted it to be a surprise." "A surprise?" I said. "Well, you got it. I'm surprised I'm out 25 grand and not invited." "Dad, I hung up before he could finish. Not because I couldn't listen, but because I needed him to feel the cold, heavy silence of a line gone dead. I spent the rest of the day walking back and forth between the kitchen and the small den where Helen's books were still on the shelves. My hand kept going to the pocket watch in my jeans, the one my old man gave me. It didn't work anymore. The hands were stuck at 5:17. But I kept it because it reminded me that time doesn't just pass. Sometimes it just stops, waiting for you to catch up or make a move. By nightfall, I had a plan. Not the whole thing, just the first step. I grabbed a yellow legal pad and started a list. Not of what I had lost, but of what they thought they had. The venue, flowers, catering, photographer, all paid for with my money. If I moved fast, I could make sure none of it went the way they imagined. The idea settled me down. For the first time all day, my hands stopped shaking. The next morning, I drove out to the Whispering Pines event lodge. It's one of those places you see in fancy magazines. All white arches and perfect lawns, the kind of place brides dream about. I sat in my truck for a minute, watching a young couple take engagement photos under a big oak tree. They were laughing. And for a second, I thought of Alara at that age, laughing the same way, before life and all their choices and ambitions had pulled her away from the girl who used to run around our yard barefoot. Inside, the woman at the front desk, with a neat bun and pearl earrings, smiled at me. "Good morning, sir. How can I help you?" "I need to talk to whoever handles the bookings," I said, "about an event scheduled for next month. The name is Williams." I watched her fingers fly across the keyboard. Her smile got tighter. "I see the booking, but I'm afraid we can only discuss details with the account holder." "I'm the one who paid the deposit," I said. Her eyes darted to the screen, then back to me. "It looks like the booking was made under an Alara Williams." "That's my daughter." I kept my voice calm and even, and she used my card without my permission. That got her attention. "Do you have proof?" I slid the credit card statement across the counter. She read it, her lips a thin line. "I see. Well, in cases like this, we can cancel the booking if the cardholder disputes the charge." "I'm disputing it." She nodded. "Then you'll need to fill out this form. Once it's processed, the booking will be void, and the deposit will be refunded." I took the form, thanked her, and walked back out into the bright, cold air. Step 1 done. That night, Alara called. "No, hi, Dad. Just straight to it. Why did you cancel my venue?" "I didn't cancel it," I said. "I disputed a fraudulent charge." "You're unbelievable. Do you know what you've done?" "Yes," I said. "I've saved myself $10,700 and maybe a little dignity." "You're ruining my wedding." "No, Alara. You did that the minute you decided I wasn't a part of it." The silence on the other end was different this time. Not confusion, not shock. It was just pure, sharp anger. "This isn't over," she said, and hung up. She was right. It wasn't over. But she had no idea which way this was going to go. It's funny how a house can get so quiet after a fight. Not the peaceful kind, but the hollow, heavy kind, like the air is holding its breath. I barely slept after Alara's call. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. Not the little girl chasing fireflies in our backyard, but the woman who had just told me I'd ruined her wedding, as if I were some stranger out to do her harm. By morning, my coffee tasted like metal, and the bitterness was stuck to my tongue. I knew one thing. If I stopped now, I'd lose more than money. I'd lose whatever bit of respect was left between us and maybe my own self-respect, too. But there was a problem. Canceling the venue was easy. Too easy. Alara would just find another one. Oliver would help her. The real damage to their plans and the real message would only get through if I hit every single piece of the puzzle before they did. I started with the florist. Lily and Vine Florals was on the corner of Maple and 6th, one of those little shops where the smell hits you before the doorbell chimes. I walked in, looking at the rows of vases and buckets of roses so perfect they looked fake. A young woman in an apron greeted me. "Morning. Can I help you find something?" "Yes," I said, keeping my voice calm and polite. "I need to talk to whoever handles the big event orders." She led me to a back counter where a guy in his 40s, with his sleeves rolled up, was wiring orchids into some complicated arch. "You must be Williams," he said without looking up. That stopped me cold. "You know my name?" He finally looked up. "Your daughter's been in here a lot. She talks." "Then you also know she used my card without permission." His hands froze. "I'm here to cancel the order," I said. He hesitated. "Look, I get it, but we've already sourced some of the flowers, imported stuff. I can't refund everything." Finally, a hurdle. "What can you refund?" "Half," he said. "And the rest?" "Well, I can hold the flowers for another event if you want to use them." I leaned in a little. "What I want is for those flowers to never touch that wedding. Can you guarantee that?" His jaw tightened. If that's what you want, then yes. We shook on it, but I could feel his eyes on my back as I left. Not everyone was going to be as easy as the woman at the venue, and that was fine. I wasn't here for easy. The catering, though, that would be the real fight. Ocean View Catering was run by an old friend of Oliver's from college, which meant they'd be expecting me to put up a fight. I called first, using the same calm voice I'd used with the venue and the florist. The woman who answered put me on hold so long I almost hung up. Then a man's voice came on, sharp and cold. "Mr. Williams, we've already received full payment authorization from your daughter. Cancellation isn't an option at this stage." "She's not authorized to use my account," I said. "That's between you and your daughter," he replied. "Our contract is binding." I could hear dishes clattering in the background, the hum of a busy kitchen. "Let me be clear," I said. "If you show up at that event, you'll be serving food I paid for without my permission. I will make it very public." A pause. "Are you threatening me, Mr. Williams?" "I'm informing you," I said. "And I think your other clients would be very interested to know how you handle unauthorized payments." Silence, then a sigh. "Fine. We'll issue a partial refund, but if you want the full amount, you'll need to go through legal channels." "Send me the paperwork," I said, and hung up. For the first time, I felt a little bit of satisfaction. This wasn't about the money anymore. It was about showing Alara and Oliver that choices have consequences and that I wasn't the soft touch they thought I was. That afternoon, Oliver showed up at my door. No call ahead, just the sound of his car and a loud, impatient knock. I opened the door, leaning against the frame. "You here to yell, or to listen?" His jaw was tight. "What the hell are you doing, Dad? You've canceled the venue, the flowers, and now the catering. Do you have any idea how much chaos you're causing?" "Plenty," I said. "That's the point. This is Alara's day." "No, Oliver. This is the day Alara tried to erase me, and you went right along with it." He looked away, rubbing the back of his neck. We didn't think you'd want to be there." I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "You didn't think, period." "Dad, I'm not your enemy," Oliver said. "But you've both treated me like one, so now you get to see what that feels like." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Without another word, he turned and left. I watched his tail lights vanish down the street, just like I'd watched Alara's trust in me disappear. That night, I made 2 more calls. One to my bank to start a fraud investigation on every charge Alara had made in the last 3 months, and one to my lawyer, Paul. Not to ask for sympathy, but for a plan. "Williams," Paul said, "if you want this to stick, you have to move before they replace what you've canceled. Otherwise, they'll just shift venues, vendors, whatever." "I know," I said. "That's why I need every contract, every payment receipt, and I need them fast." "Understood," he said. "But be prepared. They're not going to take this lying down." Good, I thought. Neither was I. By Thursday morning, I knew they'd make their move. You don't take away a person's wedding bit by bit without them figuring out the pattern. It came as an email, not from Alara, but from her lawyer. Short, cold, almost smug. "Mr. Williams, your daughter disputes your claim regarding the credit card charges. She maintains that you gave her both permission and your blessing. Any further attempt to interfere with her wedding plans will result in immediate legal action. G. Finch, attorney at law." I sat there, rereading the words until they blurred. Your blessing. That was the part that got to me. Alara knew exactly what she was doing, planting a seed of doubt on paper so that if this went to court, she could twist the story. I called Paul right away. "They've lawyered up," I said. He made a sound that was half laugh, half sigh. "Then it's time you stop playing nice." That afternoon, I headed to the bank myself. Samantha, the branch manager, met me in her office. She seemed less friendly this time. "Mr. Williams, I can put a temporary hold on these transactions you're disputing, but if your daughter is listed as an authorized user, it's a bit of a gray area." "She's not authorized for this," I said, tapping the statement I brought with me. "I believe you," she said, "but if she claims you gave her permission over the phone, we'll need something in writing to overrule it." It was a wall, not impossible to climb, but high enough to make me think about a different path. That evening, Oliver called. His voice was all tight. "Dad, you've gone too far. Alara's crying all the time. Her side of the family is calling her a victim." "Then maybe she should stop acting like one," I shot back. "Don't you even care how this makes us look?" I let the silence stretch out until he started to talk again. "No, Oliver," I finally said. "I care about how it made me look and feel when you both decided I didn't deserve to be a part of the biggest day in this family. You're blowing this way out of proportion." I almost laughed. $25,600 says I'm not. He hung up. Friday, they hit me back harder. I got a call from Whispering Pines Event Lodge. It was a different manager this time, a guy named Carl. He sounded cool, almost like he was reading from a script. "Mr. Williams, based on our new deal with Ms. Alara Williams, the original booking is going to stand. She's already paid the rest of the bill using another account." I could almost hear Alara's voice behind his words. "You can't stop me." I didn't argue. Instead, I asked him a question that made him pause. "Has the fire marshal signed off on your current capacity? Because last I checked, Whispering Pines had some ongoing occupancy review." There was a beat of silence. "I'll have to get back to you on that." That night, I sat at the kitchen table with a notepad. This wasn't just about blocking the wedding anymore. That ship had sailed the moment Alara found a new way to pay. This was about sending a message that would last longer than the wedding day. A message in a language Alara and Oliver couldn't just twist into some sob story. I didn't need to stand in their way. I needed to make them walk right past me and see what they had done. By Saturday morning, the anger had cooled into something sharp and precise. I wasn't pacing the kitchen anymore. I was sitting still, sipping cold coffee, running the whole map in my head. Every time I thought about that 25 grand, about the Whispering Pines booking, about the way Alara's lawyer had made me look like some bitter old man, my resolve got stronger. The phone buzzed. It was Paul. "You still want to go through with this?" he asked, no small talk. "If I didn't, I wouldn't have called you last night," I said. "You know, once we pull this thread, you can't just fix it. This is going to make waves." I let the silence stretch out. "Good," I said quietly. "Let them drown in it." The first step was quiet. I drove to the county clerk's office. The air smelled of paper dust and floor polish, the kind of place where time slows down. "Morning, Mr. Williams," the clerk said, looking up from his screen. "What can I do for you?" "I need to look at the occupancy records and permits for Whispering Pines Event Lodge. It's public access." His eyebrows went up a little. He knew my last name and probably heard the gossip around town. But he didn't say anything. Instead, he brought me a thick manila folder full of documents. I flipped through them until I found what I was looking for. A temporary permit issued last year, set to expire in exactly 2 weeks, which meant on the day of Alara's wedding, Whispering Pines would be operating without a valid permit unless they'd renewed it. And from the looks of the file, they hadn't. That afternoon, I stopped by the fire marshal's office. Different smell here, burnt coffee and wet coats. "Williams," the marshal, Klaus, said when I introduced myself. "Haven't seen you since that fire at the old lodge back in '09. "Yeah, I'm here about Whispering Pines." "Off the record." He leaned back, crossing his arms. "They still haven't sent in the updated floor plan. We've been after them for months." "What happens if they hold an event without it?" I asked, pretending to be innocent. "They get shut down immediately. Doesn't matter if it's a wedding, a fundraiser, or the mayor's birthday." I nodded slowly. "Good to know." By Sunday, the plan was fully formed in my head. This wasn't about revenge in the screaming, door-slamming way Alara probably expected. This was about taking back control without asking anyone for permission. I walked into my study, opened the bottom drawer, and pulled out the old leather ledger. Not the one Alara knew about. This one had the names of people who owed me favors, the kind that aren't written in a contract. One name stood out: Heinrich Becker, co-owner of Ocean View Catering. Back in '98, I'd helped him out when a broken freezer almost ruined his business. I called him, Williams, it's been a long time, he said. Heinrich, I said. I hear you're catering the Williams wedding. There was a pause. Yeah, your daughter picked a beautiful menu. Lobster, prime rib. It costs a fortune. I need you to cancel. Another pause, longer this time. Williams, I can't just. Remember 98? I said, my voice low and even. Silence. Then I'll start making some calls. That evening, the phone rang again. This time, it was Alara, and her voice was ice cold. Did you talk to my caterer? Yes. You're pathetic. Do you think ruining this will fix anything? I'm not trying to fix anything, I said. I'm just making sure the bill doesn't land on my lap again. You can't stop this wedding, she snapped. I don't need to, I said. I just need you to remember that the man you erased from your life still knows where all the switches are. The line went dead. By Monday morning, Ocean View Catering had officially backed out. Alara scrambled to find a new caterer. But time was running out, and high-end caterers don't just appear out of nowhere with 2 weeks' notice. I sat on the porch that evening, watching the sky get dark over the maple trees, with the smell of rain in the air. The quiet gave me a certain satisfaction. Not like I was gloating, just like I knew the game had changed. And the best part? I hadn't even used the real trump card yet. That was still coming. By Thursday morning, the sky over Maplewood was the color of a wet slate, and the air had that heavy stillness that comes just before a storm. I stood at the window with my coffee, watching the street. On the surface, the neighborhood looked the same. Mrs. Katina was sweeping her porch. The mail truck rattled by. But for me, everything had changed. Ocean View was out, and Alara's voice on the last call told me she was losing patience. Good. Pressure makes people careless. And careless was what I needed. The phone rang. Unknown number. Williams, a man's voice said. This is Carl from Whispering Pines Event Lodge. I'm calling about some concerns that have come up. He started talking about the permits, the fire marshal's inspections, and the renewal forms that had somehow slipped through the cracks. I could practically hear him sweating. Carl, I said finally, my daughter booked your hall for her wedding. I won't be there, but I'd hate for her to be embarrassed. Why don't you send me the renewal paperwork? I'll make sure it gets to the right place. He hesitated. That would be a big help. Of course it would. Only it was never going to get past my desk. That afternoon, I went back to the bank. Samantha, the manager, met me with that polite, tight smile bankers use for clients they know but don't quite trust. I need to change some account permissions, I said, sliding my ID across the desk. What kind of changes? She asked. I want to take away secondary access on my line of credit, I said. Right away. No pending transactions can be paid unless I'm there in person. Her eyes flicked up. That will freeze any connected cards, including your daughter's. I know exactly what it'll do. By Friday evening, Alara had gotten the message. She called, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. You froze the account. Are you out of your mind? Deposits are due. That's the thing about deposits, I said. They're not guarantees. They're just promises. And promises can be broken by both sides. You're trying to humiliate me. I almost laughed. No, Alara. I'm giving you a lesson in consequences. Humiliation is your choice. That's on you. Saturday morning, I drove out to see Klaus, an old friend who happened to know the city's health inspector. We sat in his garage, surrounded by the smell of oil and old pine, the rain tapping on the tin roof. I'm not asking you to do anything illegal, I said. Just make sure Whispering Pines gets the kind of inspection they haven't had in a while. Klaus leaned back, smirking. You've always been a quiet one, Williams. But when you move like a knife. By Sunday, the first real crack showed up. I got an email from an address I didn't know. It was one of Alara's bridesmaids. Mr. Williams, it said. I thought you should know. Alara is blaming you for the catering falling through. She said you're a bitter man trying to ruin her happiness. But I saw the receipts. I know what she did. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not because it hurt anymore, but because it proved what I'd thought. She wasn't just angry. She was scared. That night, I walked through the house, room by room. It was too quiet, the kind of quiet that reminds you of all the voices that used to fill it. Oliver's laugh. Alara and Oliver chasing each other up the stairs. Back then, I thought my job was to give them a solid foundation. I never imagined they'd use it as a way to push me out. But as I stood there looking at the rain-slick street, I realized something. I wasn't the one losing a family. They were losing me. And before the wedding day was over, they'd understand exactly what that meant. The wedding week started with the kind of light that looks harmless until you touch it and feel the heat. Monday, 7 days to go. The house was awake before I was. The pipes were settling. The refrigerator was humming. The clock in the hall was counting every second like a promise I had made. When I went into the kitchen, there was an envelope on the floor by the front door, white and impatient. No stamp, no return address. My name was printed on it in a shaky hand. Inside, it just said, "Williams, stop this. You're hurting more than just Alara. Oliver." I stood there for a long time with the note in my hand as the kettle began its little noise on the stove. Guilt is a thing people try to pay you with when their own wallets are empty. I put the paper next to my coffee and let the kettle keep complaining for a second longer than it needed to. Then I turned off the flame, poured, and tasted the day. I didn't feel like the bad guy. I felt like a man who had finally remembered his own name. By 9 o'clock, I had made 2 calls I didn't want to make and one I did. The first one was to Samantha at the bank. "Mr. Williams," she said after checking my info twice and typing on her keyboard with the speed of a woman whose morning had already gotten ahead of her. "You want to take away secondary access on the line of credit and require in-person approval for any charges over $600? "Yes," I said. "That will freeze any linked cards," she said, "including your daughter's." "I know exactly what it will do," I said, a little softer than she deserved. "You'll get a ton of angry calls in about an hour. I'm sorry about that. You can send them to me or my lawyer." She hesitated and her voice got lower, the way people's voices do when they go from talking about policy to talking person to person. "I'll add a note, Mr. Williams, but for anything already on its way, you'll need documentation." "You'll have more documentation than you could ever want," I said. I hung up and called Paul. He answered on the first ring. "Still in?" he asked, not bothering with a greeting. "If I wasn't, I wouldn't be on the line," I said. "Samantha's locked down the money. Now I need to close the doors." "Then we close doors," he said. "I've written up the vendor letters. They're clear, not mean, just facts. We'll attach the dispute case numbers and your notarized statement that you're the only one on the card and you didn't approve the wedding charges. You'll sign. I'll sign. We'll send them certified mail. Do what I said. And Paul, one more thing. On the morning of the wedding, I want a courier to hand Alara a letter. Not to humiliate her, but to teach her a lesson she can't get out of." He was quiet for a second. "Draft it and bring it in. I'll make sure it gets to her." I called Klaus last, not to bend a rule, but to make sure the rules did what they were meant to. "You know, the fire marshal," I said. "Whispering Pines renewal is missing." Klaus grunted. "Has been. Your timing is perfect." "I'm not asking for anything special," I said. "Just the inspection that should have happened months ago." "You'll get it," he said. "This week. Tell your daughter not to hang decorations where the fire exit signs are." "She left me out of the budget," I said. "Not the decorations." "Then we'll invite the code book," he replied, and the line went quiet. The afternoon got gray early, the clouds piling up like chairs at the end of a long party. I drove to Whispering Pines. The oak tree by the entrance was impressive, big and welcoming. A green roof you could trust. The building itself was trying to look like the tree, with white arches, confident and clean, and glass that caught any light that tried to shine. Carl met me in the lobby. He'd lost his tie, or maybe he thought it was a bad idea to wear one. "Mr. Williams," he said, smiling too fast. "About that renewal packet." "That's not why I'm here," I said. "I'm here to talk about choices." He blinked. "We're just a venue. You're a venue that took a deposit on a card you knew wasn't yours, I said, my voice staying flat. I'm not here to sue you. I'm here to give you a way out. He rubbed his temple with 2 fingers, like a man who'd learned that stress responds to a routine. We got another payment, he said. The event is funded, and you're operating on a temporary permit that runs out in 2 weeks, I said. The wedding is in 6 days. His eyes went to the back hall, like a dog checking the distance to its food bowl. We've sent in the floor plan revisions for approval. For approval? I asked. Or just for hope? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Here's your way out, I said. Refund the deposit now. Say it's because of some administrative delay or permit issues. Tell them to have a smaller ceremony outside. Your reputation stays good. My money goes back where it belongs. My daughter learns a word she's forgotten. What word? He asked, losing his cool. Limits, I said. He let out a little laugh he couldn't help. You're not the first father to try to teach that in this lobby. Then maybe you need a plaque, I said. He looked at the calendar, his phone, and the floor. Give me until tomorrow, he finally said. We'll decide. Decide, right? I said, and left him with the smell of lemon cleaner and the buzz of a building that liked itself too much. At home, the house had that quiet Sunday afternoon feel on a Monday, the kind that makes you want to put your hand on the wall to feel the building's bones. I did, as I passed Helen's favorite window, the one that looked politely out at the maple trees and not so politely at our neighbor's lawn gnomes. For a second, the ache of missing her hit me, then it was gone. Grief, like paperwork, is easier to deal with in small piles. Tuesday just happened without asking permission. By 10 o'clock, my phone had a dozen missed calls from Alara and 4 from numbers I didn't know. I ignored them long enough to shave and put on the shirt Helen used to call my "Don't You Dare Blue." Then I sat at the table, opened the blue file box with the vendor tabs Sarah had made, and started printing the letters Paul had drafted. The printer chugged along like an honest machine. To Whispering Pines, I attached the dispute numbers and the note about the permit. To Lily and Vine Florals, I attached the purchase order and the clause that allowed the cardholder to cancel if the charges were challenged. To Ocean View Catering, I attached the record of the payment, highlighting the fact that it was made without the card present from a device not belonging to me. I signed each one with a pen that felt like a tool, not just a fancy pen. The stack of papers looked like a plan that had become a permanent record. Names: Howard Williams, Chloe Alara, Layla Annalise, Martin Cole Heinrich Becker, Jerry Klaus, Sophia Greta, Paul Gunther, Linda Helen, Max Leo, Evan Oliver, Angela Sarah, Del Hugo, Ruth Ingrid. At noon, Alara showed up without knocking, figuring out real quick what new locks mean. She rang the doorbell like she was accusing me of something. I opened the door. You froze the account, she said as a greeting. Her voice was as tight as a bowstring. I secured my money, I said. There's a difference. You're ruining my wedding, she said, walking past me into the kitchen like it was just a hallway to her point. I'm correcting my bank statement, I said, going to the table and resting my hand on the stack of letters. I'm also correcting the idea that I don't exist. God, you love paper, she said, like it was some kind of personal flaw. Paper remembers when people forget, I said. Want some coffee? She ignored me and grabbed the top letter, skimming it without really seeing. You can't do this. I already did, I said, and I'll keep doing it until my name and my money only go where I say they go. She threw the letter back at the stack, missing the top and messing them up. I just let the mess sit. Some pictures teach better than words. This is petty, she said. This is a father who was invited out of his child's life and then asked to pay for the exit, I said. You were a teacher, Alara. You know what happens when you let a student turn in whatever they want, however they want, whenever they want. Eventually, they think the rules are an insult to them. Her chin went up, the way it does when she'd rather be mad than understand something. Mom would hate this, she said. Your mother would hate what you're doing, I said evenly, and watched the sentence hit its mark. She stared at me, her eyes bright enough to sting if I'd let them. Then she turned, opened the door, and stopped with her hand on the knob. "I will have my wedding," she said. "With or without you." "You already chose without," I said. "Now you get to find out what that costs." The door clicked shut with a soft finality that a louder sound couldn't match. By mid-afternoon, the florist, Lily and Vine, was the fight I had expected. Annalise, the owner, had the kind of voice that had learned to say yes to brides and no to budgets. "Mr. Williams," she said when I showed up and put the contract clause and the dispute number on the counter. "I understand your side. I also understand that imported flowers are sitting in my cooler, and they'll die if I separate them from your daughter's wedding date." "I'll split the loss," I said. "Half refund right now. You can sell whatever you can, and you bill me only for what the market won't buy." She blinked. "You're volunteering to pay for flowers you don't want?" "I'm paying to make sure those flowers don't show up on a day I'm not allowed to attend," I said. Something in her face softened. Maybe it was respect, not for me, but for the clear boundary that wasn't asking to be liked. "I can do half," she said, "on the condition that you stop calling my staff." "I've never called your staff," I said. "I talk to owners and I use paper." She printed out a refund form. The cash register made a sound that felt like it was admitting a mistake. When she handed me the slip, our fingers didn't touch. "Tell your daughter to pick simpler flowers next time," she said. Not in a mean way. "Peonies eat fathers." "Noted," I said, and left as the bell gave a bright goodbye. Ocean View Catering tried to be both smart and generous at the same time. Heinrich Becker, the co-owner I helped out in the late 90s, met me at the back door, which always smelled like onions and heat. "Williams," he said, wiping his hands on a towel that had earned its rest. "My guys would rather do a backyard barbecue for you than a wedding for that girl." "She's my daughter," I said. "You can say my daughter." He let out a sigh. "Your daughter. Sorry. Look, I can refund 60%, no problem. The other 40 I'll turn into credit. You pick a date. I'll feed your church group or whatever you old guys do when you're not enforcing the 10 Commandments." "Enforcing the 10 Commandments would be a start," I said. "Let's make it 70-30. I'll donate the credit to the food pantry." He stared at me, then grinned despite himself. "You always had a way of making a guy feel like he chose to get played." "I make a way," I said. "You choose it." He wrote the check and circled a date on the calendar. "Bring me that donut fundraiser," he said. "We'll give Maplewood the gout." By the time I was back on my porch, the day had a shape I recognized. Steps taken, records made. A structure I could stand under if the lawsuits started raining down. I put the florist's receipt and the catering check on the table, opened the ledger, and wrote the lines that made me feel relieved. Mon 2:10 p.m. Lily and Vine Florals. 50% refund. Remainder for resale with owner's approval. Mon 3:05 p.m. Ocean View Catering. 70% refund. 30% credit to the food pantry. Check in hand. I didn't need to underline them. The lines were solid. The evening was decent enough to be normal. A neighbor's lawn mower 2 houses down. A dog arguing with a squirrel. The smell of someone else's dinner floating over. A mix of invitation and memory. I boiled some pasta, ate it standing at the counter, and let the house speak in the soft whispers Helen had taught it. Then my phone buzzed. "Mr. Williams," a voice said, careful and professional. "This is Greta from the City Inspections Office. We're scheduling follow-ups for venues with expired permits." "Whispering Pines?" I asked. "Yes, sir," she said. "We've been in contact with their management. We'll be on-site Thursday afternoon." "Thank you," I said. "I'm sorry if this causes problems in your family," she added in a tone that showed she knew and didn't need me to confirm it. "Sometimes problems keep a building from falling in on itself," I said. "Good night, Ms. Greta." I slept like a man who'd put the right weight on the right shelves. Tuesday's sun came up with more confidence than I felt like giving it. I put on clothes that had seen more city offices than church pews and drove the envelope with the vendor letters and documents to Gunther's office to be scanned and notarized. He stamped them with the satisfaction of a man whose ink knows what it's for. "Courier's booked for Saturday morning," he said, tapping a sticky note onto the letter I had for Alara. 9:25 a.m. Handover outside the dressing room. No drama, just the thing itself. I looked at the letter one more time. It wasn't long. It started with the 3 sentences I had asked Alara for and never got. "I'm sorry. I was wrong. Here's what I'm going to do to make it right." And then it did the adult version with dates, vendors, amounts, and actions. It included the legal numbers that made those actions happen. It ended with one line I'd rewritten 4 times and finally left alone because it didn't need to be clever, just honest. "You taught me what it feels like to be erased. I'm teaching you what boundaries sound like." Gunther slid the letter into a heavier envelope than it needed. "You sure?" He asked about the delivery. "Yes," I said. "About the outcome?" "No, that's the point." He nodded, not satisfied with the plan, but with me not pretending to know what a plan can't tell you. When I got home, there were 3 new voicemails. 2 from numbers that sounded like they were carrying stress. One from Alara. "Dad," she said, her voice tired and mad at the same time. "I found a new caterer. I found a smaller florist. Whispering Pines is fine. Stop trying to sabotage me. You're obsessed with teaching lessons. I don't need your lessons." I didn't call back. I forwarded the message to a folder in my email called Evidence Family. Not because I wanted a collection of ugly things, but because my memory is nicer than my bank account and tends to soften the edges I need to keep sharp. In the afternoon, I stood at my front window and watched a delivery truck go by. It didn't stop. I felt a pang of disappointment, the same feeling I had the year after Helen died, waiting for something to show up that wasn't mine to expect. I put the feeling away with the junk mail and did 10 minutes of something useful. Tightened a loose screw on the handrail, oiled a sticky hinge, and reset the porch light timer that has its own ideas about sunset. Later, Oliver called. "Leo's practice ends at 6, he said, his voice rough in a new way. "You want to come? He bats better when you're watching." "You want me there?" I said. "He wants you there," he corrected. "But yeah, I'll stand by the third baseline," I said. "I won't coach." "Good," he said, and almost smiled through the phone. "You yell weird." At the field, the grass did what fields do. It smelled like green and dirt and the chance to forget who you're mad at. Leo swung like he meant it but didn't quite know how to yet. Oliver kept his hands in his pockets and his mouth mostly shut. We stood shoulder to shoulder without trying to. "Alara's not giving up," he said after a few pitches. "She thinks you're enjoying this." "I enjoy being in charge of things that have my name on them," I said. "I'm not enjoying anything else." "You sent a letter to her caterer," he said. "I sent 7 letters," I said. "She'll get one more on Saturday." He stared at the chain-link fence like it could turn into something that kept feelings on their own fields. "Do you have to be so thorough?" "I've tried being vague," I said. "That guy said it taught the wrong lesson." He nodded like a man who understood something he didn't want to and watched his son hit a grounder to second base with the kind of pride that doesn't depend on the outcome. Wednesday brought weather that knew its place. The city's email came at 9 o'clock. Whispering Pines inspection confirmed for Thursday, 6 p.m. I forwarded it to Gunther, filed it under Whispering Pines compliance, and put on the shirt I wear when I want strangers to assume I know more than I do. The florist's half-refund hit my account by noon. Ocean View's check cleared by 2 o'clock. I made a stop at the food pantry with the catering credit and watched a volunteer write Ocean View, 30% on a calendar with a pen that had seen a lot of good. "You feeding 50 or 500? She asked. "Depends on how rude my neighbors are this month," I said. She laughed the way only people who have counted cans and names can. "You bring the list, we'll bring the casseroles." On my way home, I passed Whispering Pines. A guy in a city polo shirt was in the parking lot with a clipboard. He was looking at the building like he could see through the walls. I drove on without honking. Some moments are better witnessed without you in them. Alara texted at 4 o'clock. I heard what you did at the food pantry, trying to make yourself the hero. I wrote back, trying to make the money do less harm. She didn't answer. Thursday ran like a movie I hadn't written but had seen before. At 1:58, 2 city vehicles rolled into Whispering Pines. At 2:41, a third, a white SUV, with the city seal on the door. At 3:15, a single email from Carl. Mr. Williams, out of an abundance of caution, we've decided to move all events scheduled in the next 2 weeks to our outdoor garden area. Your daughter has been notified. We appreciate your engagement with our process. Carl. I stared at abundance of caution until it turned into we almost got caught. Then I wrote one line in the ledger at 3:17 p.m. Whispering Pines. Indoor canceled, outdoor only. Alara notified. And underneath it, because sometimes you get to say what a day tasted like, control where you can, refuse where you must. Let gravity do some work. It rained that evening the way it does when clouds finally accept being clouds. I made soup like Helen taught me when money was tight and taste was not, and I ate it with bread Sarah had sent in a bag with a note that just said, for strength. I slept as if the roof understood me. Friday morning, the florist's half refund posted. The bank's fraud investigation added a line to the case file that read, cardholder claims no verbal authorization given. Authorized user removed. The monitoring app on my phone stayed quiet. I took that as a compliment from the part of the world that likes to wake you up with bad news. Alara called at noon and didn't care if I was ready to hear her. You got what you wanted, she said, her words tight enough to bruise. Outdoor ceremony, bare tables, people asking questions. I wanted the truth to show, I said. It's showing. She tried to laugh and choked on the sound. You'll look back and regret this. I regret what I taught you before now, I said. I won't regret this. She breathed hard into the phone, like she wanted the microphone to fill her lungs. You're not coming, she said. Even if I asked you, you're not invited. I know, I said. The line went quiet and then ended, like a hand pulling away from a handshake it never meant. I spent the rest of the day doing work that looks like avoiding trouble but is actually building a place for it to land. I went to the post office. Ingrid stamped the courier envelope with the seriousness of a woman who believes in the mail the way some people believe in prayer. Saturday, she said, tapping the label. 9:25 a.m. He'll sign. She'll sign. Heaven will record. Thank you, I said. I stopped at the hardware store for a new set of house numbers because the old ones had started to lean, like a grin I didn't want my front door to wear. Hugo, behind the counter, asked if I wanted brushed nickel or matte black. I picked the one Helen liked. You're putting your name back on things, he said without knowing he was right. Feels like that, I said. At home, the light under the banyan tree had turned into that late afternoon gold that forgives more than it has to. I sat on the porch with the ledger open and the pocket watch Helen gave me for our 10th anniversary on the railing. I had just wound it. The second hand went in a circle like it trusted the next minute. I wrote the last lines of the day. Friday, 10:02 p.m. Courier scheduled, letter sealed. Friday, 4:48 p.m. House numbers replaced. And then, a reminder to myself, put your name where you can see it. I closed the book and let the house breathe with me. The marigolds along the path were burning bright in the golden light, loud and not sorry. They looked like small suns getting ready for Saturday. Tomorrow, a man with a bag would walk down a hallway and give my daughter an envelope. She would open it and find my words not as weapons, but as walls. Lines and clauses and amounts. And the sentence I wrote when I remembered I was a father with a backbone. The wedding would happen or it wouldn't. The sky would cooperate or it wouldn't. People would talk. They'd say I was petty or that I had principles or maybe both. What they wouldn't say is that I was gone. That part, at least, was over. Saturday morning showed up without asking if I was ready. The air had that weird stillness you only get before something big happens. A wedding, a storm, or a fight you know you're going to have whether you like it or not. The world outside my window looked clean from last night's rain. But I knew better. The streets might be fresh, but people carry yesterday with them. Always. I sat at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee that had gone lukewarm. The courier was set for 9:25 a.m. sharp. I timed it so the letter wouldn't get there early enough to cause a scene before the ceremony, but just late enough that she couldn't pretend it wasn't there before she walked down the aisle. This wasn't about ruining her day. It was about making sure the truth walked with her, even if I wasn't allowed to. At 9:12, my phone buzzed with a text from Gunther. Courier confirmed. On site now. 9 minutes later, another one. Envelope handed to maid of honor. Straight to the dressing room. No problems. I pictured it. Alara in her dressing room, lace and silk spread out like snowdrifts. Her friends rushing around with makeup brushes and champagne glasses. Then the knock. A man in a uniform with a thin envelope. My name in the corner. Her fingers would pause, maybe hesitate, maybe not. She'd open it. And there, in black ink on cream paper, my words. Not a rant. Not a plea. Just the facts she had tried to hide. I didn't need to be there to hear the silence that came after. By 10 o'clock, I was out in the yard, trimming the marigolds. I wasn't dressed for a wedding. No suit, no polished shoes, just my work jeans and the shirt Helen used to tease me about, saying it made me look like I was trying out to be a small-town mayor. The morning sun hit the gold of the flowers, and for a second, I thought of Helen's hair in that light. She would have known exactly what to say to me today. Something that wouldn't have stopped me, but might have made it easier to breathe while I did it. Around noon, the first call came. It wasn't Alara. It was Oliver. You sent it. His voice was tight. I sent it, I said. You had to do it today? Yes, I said. Today is the day she chose to erase me. Today is the day I remind her she failed. There was a pause on the other end. She's upset. I'm sure she is, I said, and went back to clipping the dead heads off the marigolds. By 1 o'clock, the ceremony had started. I knew because the neighborhood's unofficial reporter, Klaus, texted me. Outdoor setup, folding chairs, cloudy. Half the flowers are gone. Looks a little sad. I smiled, not because I was happy, but because I knew I had done what I needed to. I didn't stay in my house waiting for updates. That's not my style. I drove to the lake instead, parked where the view opens up like a stage curtain, and sat on the bench Helen and I used to use every Sunday afternoon. The breeze came off the water, cool and steady. A heron stood in the shallow water, waiting for a fish that might or might not show up. I've always respected that kind of patience. It was almost 3 o'clock when my phone rang again. This time it was Sarah. You're going to get the whole story whether you want it or not, she said without any small talk. I want it, I said. She read it, Sarah said, in front of the mirror. Her hands were shaking. The maid of honor tried to take it away. She wouldn't let her. She read every word. Then she told everyone to leave the room for 5 minutes. And? I asked. She cried, Sarah said. Not the pretty kind. The kind that makes you ugly. Then she told her makeup artist to start over. Then she said her words. He's dead to me. That's her choice, I said. Sarah's voice softened. Williams. I don't think she understands what she just threw away. She will, I said. But not today. There was a long pause. Do you want to know if she went through with it? Sarah asked. I thought about it. No, I said finally. Not yet. I didn't need the picture of her walking down the aisle in my head today. That was her moment, for better or worse. My moment had already happened, quiet, in print, delivered by a man in a uniform. At 5 o'clock, I was back home, ledger open, pen in hand. I wrote the day's lines. Saturday 9:25 a.m. Letter delivered to Alara's dressing room. Saturday 1 p.m. Ceremony watched from a distance. Outdoor, reduced decorations. Saturday 3 p.m. Confirmation from Sarah. Letter read, private reaction. I didn't add any extra notes. The facts were enough. Evening came on slow, the way it does when you're not rushing toward anything. I made a simple dinner, grilled cheese and tomato soup, the kind Helen used to ask for when she wanted comfort without saying the word. While I ate, the phone buzzed again. This time it was Leo. Grandpa? His voice was small and unsure. I'm here, Leo. Mom's mad, he said. I know, I said. She says you're trying to ruin everything, he said. Are you? I took a breath. No, Leo. I'm trying to fix something. Sometimes fixing something means changing it in ways people don't like. Oh, he said, like he was trying to understand that idea. Will you still come to my game next week? I wouldn't miss it, I said. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, staring at the wall. You can win an argument even when you're in the right and still feel the empty space of the loss in your bones. That night before bed, I walked through the house, turning off lights. In the quiet, I heard the faint hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the old clock, the sigh of the wind against the roof. Everything in its place. Everything was mine again. Tomorrow the cleanup would start. People would take sides. Stories would get twisted. But tonight, I slept knowing the one thing I had set out to do was done. I had made sure my absence would be noticed, not just assumed. And if Alara wanted to tell the world I was dead to her, well, sometimes you let them write the first sentence. You just make sure you're the one who writes the last. The morning after the wedding felt like the whole town had stayed up too late talking about someone else's life. Maplewood handles gossip politely, with front porches and careful voices. The word bless was doing more work than it should. I made coffee and stood at the sink while the kettle grumbled its way to a boil. The house had that day after quiet, not peaceful exactly, but the hush of a stage before the curtain goes up again for the parts nobody practiced. My phone buzzed at 7:13. Gunther. You'll see chatter. Stick to the facts. No comments. A second later, a link to the neighborhood online forum. The headline was a nice way of saying something mean. Questions about last night's outdoor ceremony at Whispering Pines. The thread below was a mess of too many words. Anonymous cousins, a bridesmaid's aunt, a man who swore he'd been in the event business for 20 years. The words, regulatory compliance, and unexpected vendor changes, kept showing up. Like a song nobody liked but couldn't stop humming. Closed it. There's a difference between knowing what people say and letting it live in your head. By 9 o'clock, Klaus texted, she's going to twist it. Be ready. He never uses extra words. A minute later came another message. This one was a screenshot of Alara's public post. We made it beautiful in spite of sabotage. There were 3 photos. Chairs on damp grass, a smile that had to work hard for the camera, a cake that looked just a little smaller than what she had planned. Her caption, some people choose control over love. We chose love anyway. I set the phone face down on the table and watched the steam rise off my mug like a thought deciding whether to stay. Control over love. That's a sentence you write when you don't want to ask where love ends and stealing begins. 10:04, there was a knock. It wasn't Alara. Her ring was the kind that wants applause. This one, stitches number 3, space 1, was Sarah. She came in with a box of muffins and the honest tiredness under her eyes. I brought muffins, she said, for either victory or to say I'm sorry. Both, I said. Sit. She did, opening the box like it was a peace treaty. We ate in silence for about 30 seconds. The kind of silence that says we don't mean it any harm. She posted, Sarah finally said. I saw. She left out most of the important words. Sarah sighed. That girl thinks fancy words can build a house. Fancy words can cover a wound, I said. They can't stop the bleeding. Sarah looked at me the way only another parent can, when you both know you taught certain lessons too late. Do you want to know the part that wasn't in the photos? She asked. The part that's not going to end up online? Tell me. She read your letter, Sarah said. She folded it carefully and put it in her bag. After the ceremony, before the photos, she went to the garden path and cried. Not the angry kind, the sad kind. Then she told the photographer she wanted one picture without her flowers. She said, I don't want to hold anything I didn't earn. The sentence landed in my chest and made itself comfortable. I didn't trust it enough to thank it for coming. And Lucas, he stood next to her like a man who had decided what he wouldn't carry. Sarah said he didn't try to fix it. He just stayed. We finished our muffins and our coffee. When she left, she put her hand on my shoulder the way people used to in church when blessings were given with a touch. At noon, my phone lit up again. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail and listened, an old habit from a man who learned that words are braver when they think you're not in the room. Mr. Williams, this is Carl from Whispering Pines. I wanted to apologize for the mess last night. We followed the inspection rules as we had to. I also wanted you to know we're giving your daughter a 25% refund for the change in where the event was. We'll note in our files that the timing of the permits created the change. Thank you for your cooperation. Translation. We moved you to the garden because buildings and rules matter. Here's money that says so. I forwarded the voicemail to Gunther with the subject line, Whispering Pines partial refund, and wrote a line in the ledger. Sunday 1:27 p.m. Whispering Pines 25% refund to Alara. Reason, compliance. Then I put the ledger away. Some days, records can wait. Around 2 Oliver called. He didn't say hello. You satisfied? He asked. His voice rough from the night before or from years of talking himself into things he didn't believe. I'm calm, I said. That's different. You humiliated her. She humiliated the truth, I said. The truth humiliated her back. He sighed hard through his nose, a teenage sound in a man's body. The food was late. The flowers were. It wasn't what she wanted. He let the last part hang like a complaint that had lost its confidence. It was what she bought, I said. With other people's money. She says she'll pay you back. She'll write it down, I said. Then she'll prove it. What if she can't? He asked. And there it was. The question of a son who'd spent a decade believing the word can't was just a game he could win if he moved fast enough. Then she'll learn what can't means when it's not just a game, I said. Oliver, this isn't a play. This is math. I hate you like this, he said. You hated me when I said yes, and it made you think I would always say yes, I answered. Pick your hate. He hung up, and I stood in the kitchen long enough to see the way the light moved across the counter like a slow dancer. You can spend a lifetime waiting for someone to be sorry and miss the moment when that isn't the point anymore. For Gunther called. 2 things. First, Whispering Pines refund is real. Second, Ocean View sent a letter confirming the credit was given to the food pantry. I added it to the file with a note, I said. What note? That generosity without just giving things away is possible, he said. Williams, I get 1 wise saying a month. You just used it. He paused, then added, softer. How are you? Less holy than people will say I am, I said. Less mean than my daughter needs me to be to call herself a victim. That sounds like a man who isn't bragging and isn't apologizing, Gunther said. Which is to say, good. We hung up. I walked out to the porch. Maplewood's late afternoon had the same steady hum it always does, the double bounce of a basketball 3 houses down. A lawn mower that wouldn't quit. Mrs. Katina's radio playing a song too old for anyone to be embarrassed by liking it. The banyan tree made shade in perfect squares. The marigolds were loud in the forgiving light. Car pulled up. I knew it before I saw who got out because some car engines announced their owners. Lucas. He came up the steps with a paper bag in one hand and his jaw set in that way I recognize from boys who have decided to be men even when nobody gives them a diploma for it. Williams, he said, I brought leftover cake. It's not a peace offering. It's food. Food survives peace talks, I said. Come sit. He put the bag on the table and didn't touch it. She read your letter. So I heard. She said it was cruel, he said. I told her cruel would have been silence. We sat with that. The porch floorboards held our weight like they always have. She's going to do it, he said after a while. The plan. The vendors, the payments. The whole thing. He said the line that got her was, stop using family as a discount code. He made a face. I think she hated you for writing it because she saw herself in it. Seeing it is step 1, I said. Step 2 is the part one can't do for her. He nodded. I want to marry her, Williams, but I won't marry the version of her that thinks love is a coupon. If that means we wait, we wait. You'll have my blessing when your sentences don't need my money, I said. It sounded nicer than it reads. He heard it that way. He reached into the bag and pulled out the smallest piece of the cake, wrapped in wax paper like a secret trying to be good. Eat some, he said. You paid for the flour at least. We ate cake with our hands because neither of us wanted the ritual of plates, and it tasted like every wedding cake you ever pretended was better than it is. Sweet, a little thick, iced with honesty. We drank water from glasses that didn't match because the good sets are for guests who don't make you have to be real. Thank you for not showing up, Lucas said when he left. And thank you for showing up. It's easier to understand both when you're the reason, I said. At 6, I took a walk because sometimes you need to let your feet think. The sidewalk remembered Alara's scraped knees and Oliver's skateboard accidents. Near the rental house, I stopped. No lights, no noise. A house wants people who know the difference between a place to live and a place to store stuff. When I turned back toward home, I saw Helena Evans coming up the street with a grocery bag looped over her arm. She slowed when she saw me. Williams, she said. Congratulations are weird today. So I'll just say, I'm with you. I'm with you too, I said. Helena, she added. Leo told me the ceremony was outside. He said it was pretty but also cold. He's 8. That's smart criticism. Tell him I agree, I said. She shifted the bag to her other arm. Alara will go into hiding for a few days. Then she'll either start digging or she'll start crying. If she digs, she'll be fine. I'm done holding the shovel for other people, I said gently. Good, she said, and went on her way with the stride of someone who knows where she's going, because where she's been was not it. Night came on with the kind of confidence that makes you forgive it for eating the day. I turned on the porch light. The new timer hadn't decided to argue with the sunset. I sat with the ledger open, just because a routine is a safe place. I wrote a few lines from the past 2 days, filling in what I hadn't written down because writing isn't living. Saturday 5:40 p.m. Leo called, asked if I'm ruining everything, explained the difference between fixing and ruining, promised to go to his game next week. Sunday 12:07 p.m. Whispering Pines partial refund noted. Sunday 4:03 p.m. Lucas, cake, plus conversation. Boundary confirmed. Blessing delayed. Then I closed the book and let the paper become furniture again. The phone buzzed one more time before I went to bed. A message from Alara. Not a big speech, not for show, just 3 lines, no commas, and to the point in a way that made me think maybe she had read the letter more than once. I will send you a plan on Tuesday. I will not use the word emergency when I mean I want something. I didn't reply. Not because I was holding back, but because new starts are delicate, and my job wasn't to put pressure on it before it was ready. I slept like a man who'd traded noise for hard work. The house remembered how to breathe around me. The marigolds outside dimmed to a stubborn glow and kept watching. And in the morning, because mornings still come even when people post about you, the sun showed up without checking the neighborhood website, and the kettle asked if I was ready to make a day I didn't have to say sorry for. If you had asked me then if getting back at someone felt like winning, I would have said no. It felt like putting your name back where it had been erased and choosing not to write anyone else's for them. It felt like boundaries that didn't yell because they didn't need to. It felt like cake on a porch step, and a letter read in a mirror, and a boy who wants you at his baseball game next week because that's the kind of score that counts. And it felt like this. The pocket watch wound and steady, ticking toward a Tuesday where another envelope would arrive. Not by a courier and not in a panic, but by choice. A plan in my daughter's handwriting on paper she finally understood. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday, just like she promised. Not certified mail, not slipped under the door in some secret way, just sitting there in my mailbox between a water bill and a flyer for half-price lawn care. Regular paper in a regular envelope, but my name, written in Alara's handwriting, had a weight it hadn't carried in years. I didn't open it right away, not because I was scared of what was inside, but because sometimes you have to decide if you're ready to see the truth in black ink. I took it into the kitchen, put it on the table, and made coffee first. I measured the grounds, poured the water, all without looking at it. The sound of the kettle heating up was steadier than my own heartbeat. When I finally tore the flap, I found a single page, folded precisely into thirds. No fancy stuff, no perfume, no attempt to decorate it, just her handwriting, smaller than usual, as if she wanted the words to take up less space in the world. "Dad," it said, "this is the plan. 1. Repayment schedule, $1,000 per month starting next month until the card balance and wedding costs are covered completely. 2. All vendor accounts will be transferred out of your name by Friday. 3. Lucas has agreed to pay half of the remaining catering bill. 4. I will not use the emergency card again. It will be cut up and returned to you. 5. I will give you monthly updates on payments until the debt is gone. This is not an apology. That will come when I have earned the right to give it. I am not asking for forgiveness yet. I am asking for the chance to do what I said I would. Alara." I sat there for a long time with the page in my hands. It wasn't a love letter, but in a way it was something more rare. A letter that didn't try to make itself softer with excuses. I called Gunther. She sent the plan. And, he asked, "It's better than I expected, Williams. Better than you expected isn't the same as good. Does it work for you?" "Yes," I said. Then after a pause. "No, it works for the money. It doesn't work for the part where a daughter becomes a stranger." "That part," Gunther said, "isn't in the plan. It's in the way you do it." I hung up and put the letter in the ledger, not with the transactions but in the front cover, where I keep the things that matter more than the numbers. By Thursday, the first surprise showed up, not from Alara, but from Oliver. He came to my house without calling, wearing the same jacket he'd worn to the wedding, the lapel still creased from where the flower had been pinned. He didn't look like a man coming to fight. He looked like a man carrying something heavier than the bag in his hand. "I'm not here for her," he said as soon as I opened the door. "I'm here for me." "That's an interesting difference," I said, stepping aside. He sat at the table and put a folder between us. Inside were papers, bank statements, screenshots, and a signed letter from his boss. "I'm paying half her debt," he said. "Not because she asked me to, because I should have stopped her, and I didn't." I didn't speak. I let him fill the silence. "I thought keeping the peace was love," he said. "It's not. It's just fear dressed up in a nicer suit." There was a small kind of courage in that sentence. "Half," I repeated. "Half," he said. "Every month. The same as her. If she misses a payment, I'll make it up." I closed the folder and slid it back to him. "You don't need my permission, Oliver." "No," he said. "But I need you to know I'm not invisible in this story." That night, I sat on the porch and thought about what he'd said. Being invisible isn't always about not being seen. It's about choosing to stand where no one looks. Maybe Oliver was finally stepping into the light, even if it was hot. The following week, Alara called. No text, no voicemail first, just her voice on the line. "I transferred the accounts," she said. "The vendors are in my name now, and I cut the card up. Do you want the pieces?" "No," I said. "I'm not keeping souvenirs." Silence on the line. Then, "You aren't going to make this easy, are you?" "No," I said again. "Easy doesn't teach anything." She let out a sigh like she was holding back 3 different answers. "Okay, I'll send the first payment on Friday." "Alara," I said before she could hang up. "This isn't about you becoming someone I approve of. It's about you becoming someone you can live with." "I know," she said quietly. And then the line went dead. Days passed. Payments arrived, small but on time. Each one was a step in something I wasn't ready to name yet. But then came the second surprise. A letter from Whispering Pines Event Lodge addressed to me. I opened it expecting another refund confirmation. Instead, it was a complaint filed by Alara. She claimed that the last-minute change of location was because of third-party interference and wanted more money back. They were asking for my statement in response. I called her right away. "Why?" I asked. "I thought," She started. You thought what? My voice was quieter than I expected. That maybe they owed me more, she said. Alara, I said. You can't talk about being responsible in one breath and file a complaint in the next just because you might get a check. It's not about. She began, but stopped. I'll take it back. No, I said. See it through. Let them say no. Let yourself see what happens when you try to rewrite a truth that's already public. 2 days later, she called back. They said no, she said. And I'm not fighting it. A pause. I get it now. About the truth humiliating you back. It wasn't an apology, but it was a mirror. By the end of the month, the debt had gone down by $2,000. More than I had expected this early. Lucas stopped by one evening with a box of leftover catering napkins. Figured you might use them for something, he said. They're paid for now. We stood in the kitchen folding them. Two men who had both had to learn the hard way that love without respect is just a play with bad lighting. Do you think she'll forgive me? He asked suddenly. Don't ask that, I said. Ask if she'll forgive herself. That's the harder one. The next weekend, Leo's baseball game became a neutral zone. Alara was there, sitting 2 rows down with Lucas. Oliver sat beside her. The 3 of them looking like a family photo in a frame that hadn't been cleaned yet. Between innings, Leo ran up to me. Mom says you're coming to dinner next month, he said. Is that true? Yeah, he said, his eyes wide. She said it's not a peace treaty. It's, I forgot the word, an arrangement, I offered. Yeah. Is that like a peace treaty? Sometimes, I said. Sometimes it's just a place to start. When the game ended, Alara came over. No crowd, no stage, just her in the afternoon light. I want you to come, she said. To what? Dinner. Here with us. No speeches, no ledgers, just dinner. I looked for a trap on her face. Didn't see one. I'll think about it. She nodded. That's all I'm asking. As I walked to my car, I realized something. Getting revenge had stopped being the point weeks ago. What I wanted now was harder to name, something between justice and fixing things. Like the moment a broken bone sets and you decide if you're going to use it again. That night I opened the ledger and wrote, Friday, Alara dinner invitation. Conditions unclear. Trust is not final. And for the first time, I didn't put a dollar amount on the line because maybe, just maybe, some debts aren't meant to be measured in money. I didn't open her text right away. It came at 4:17 p.m. The time of day when sunlight slips sideways through my kitchen window and makes dust look like stars. Before you come to dinner, read this. A link. No emoji. No sneaky jokes. I made myself finish wiping the counter, rinsed the rag, and folded it into a neat square. Then I tapped the link. It wasn't a private message. It was public. A photo of the outdoor aisle. Grass, still damp. Sky, undecided. Chairs in neat rows. And below it, Alara's words. Not a photo caption, an admission. Last week, I called what happened at my wedding sabotage. It wasn't. It was a consequence. I used my father's emergency card for things that weren't emergencies and told a story where I was the victim. That was a lie, especially to myself. I'm paying back what I took in money and trust. I'm posting this here because I was loud about the complaint. I'm going to be louder about the truth. Comments were turned off. I'll answer with receipts, not replies. I stood there with the phone in my hand and felt something give way behind my ribs. Not a wall collapsing. Those make a sound. This was quieter, like a door I'd forgotten to oil deciding to swing on its hinges. I took a breath, put the phone face down, and let the kitchen be a kitchen again. At 5:03, I got dressed like a man going to dinner, not a man going to a court hearing. A shirt that fit, a jacket Helen liked, the old watch wound and honest in my pocket. On my way out, I stopped at the ledger, thought about bringing it, and didn't. If this was going to work, I couldn't show up with a book of records under my arm like a priest carrying scripture to a house that hadn't asked for a sermon. The drive to Alara's place took 10 minutes and 3 decades. The streets knew my tires the way I know the sound of my refrigerator kicking on. Her house was neat and bright. a porch light already on even though the sky wasn't done being day. I parked at the curb. For a second, I just sat with my hands on the steering wheel, the engine ticking as it cooled, and said nothing to myself, because sometimes words ruin the part of you that's busy listening. Lucas opened the door before I knocked. He didn't try to shake my hand first. He pulled me into an awkward half-hug that felt better than it looked, then stepped back as if to show me the room and the fact that it wasn't going to swallow us alive. "Thanks for coming," he said. "Thanks for asking," I said. The place smelled like garlic and something sweet hiding under it. Maybe honey. The table was set for 4. A 5th napkin sat folded on the counter like an idea. Leo came running in from the hallway, his socks sliding on the hardwood, a grin that couldn't be held back. "Grandpa," he said, bumping into my leg and then pretending he meant to stop short all along. "I made the salad. Mom says I tossed it like a tornado." "I believe you," I said. "Tornadoes are thorough." He laughed and dashed away in search of whatever 8-year-olds are always sure is more fun than the room they're in. Lucas pointed toward the sink. "Beer? Water?" "Water," I said. "I don't need any help saying something dumb." He poured and handed me a glass that didn't match the others. I liked it better for that. A moment later, Alara came out of the hallway, wiping her hands on a towel. She didn't stop a yard away and make me walk to her. She walked right up to me, and each step felt like a decision she'd made without needing to prove it to the whole room. "Hi, Dad," she said. "Hi, kid," I said. The word slipped out from some older version of me and didn't feel out of place. We stood there in that awkward doorway between saying sorry and being hungry. And then she said, "Can we start at the table? If we try to do this standing up, I'll say things in the wrong order." We sat. Dishes arrived. Bread, chicken roasted with lemon, the infamous tornado salad. No big speeches, no scraping of chairs to show we were being sincere. Leo told a story about a math quiz as if it were a championship game. Lucas asked me about the old truck as if he really wanted to know. The hum of their refrigerator was louder than mine. It was their kind of house music. Halfway through the chicken, Alara put her fork down and reached under her chair. She pulled out a small, clear glass jar with a metal lid. Inside were pieces of gray plastic in sharp little puzzle shapes. She set it on the table between the salt and the water pitcher. "I cut the card up last week," she said. "I saved the pieces because I figured." "Because it's good," I said. I didn't touch the jar. "And one more thing," she added, sliding an envelope out from under the jar. "Before you say anything I can't afford to forget." She pushed the envelope across the table. I looked at Lucas. He nodded like a man who had practiced not speaking at exactly the right time. "Open it," Alara said. I did. Cashier's check. $2,000. I looked from the paper to her face. "I sold the dress," she said before I could ask what I was afraid to. "Not because you asked me to. Because I couldn't imagine wearing it again without hearing the wrong story in the fabric." "It was your dress," I said quietly. "It was your money," she said more quietly. "And it was me back then. I'm trying to be me now." Lucas sighed in a way that made it obvious he'd been holding that breath since yesterday. He reached into his pocket and placed a second check next to the first. "Half," he said. "Like we promised." "Careful," I said with a hint of a smile. "You keep this up, and I'll have to admit I raised at least one person who understands math." Alara laughed once, surprised by the sound of it, and looked like she might cover her mouth, then didn't. "I didn't invite you here to pay you," she said. "I invited you here because I don't want to be the person whose story needs you to be invisible to make sense. Some moments deserve a gavel you can hit on a table so everyone knows the decision is final." I didn't have one. I had my glass of water and the jar of plastic pieces and the old watch, heavy against my ribs, which was enough. "Okay," I said. "Ground rules." She nodded. "Okay," I said, without making them sound like suggestions. "I don't loan money. I don't cover you just this one time. I don't listen to you call something you want an emergency. If you need something, you use the word need. If you want something, you call it want. You're allowed both. You're not allowed to mix them up in front of me. I won't, she said. If you make a plan, you follow it, I continued. If you fail, you tell me before the number fails you, not after. I will, she said. And when you talk about me online, I said, feeling the absurdity of the century we live in and refusing to let it make me smaller. You talk about me like a person, not a character. Her eyes got watery but didn't cry. Yes, she said. I already started. I saw, I said. We ate the rest of the meal like people who had decided to be in the same room on purpose. Nothing blew up. No big shouting match, no slammed doors. The chicken got cool. The conversation got warmer. Leo told another story that mixed up 3 different comic books in his description of P.E. class, and nobody corrected him. Felt like a house doing its job. After the dishes were shared, not assigned, Lucas took Leo outside to show him how to tie a proper knot on something that didn't need a knot. Elara and I stayed at the table. She picked at a crumb with her thumbnail and then stopped, put both hands flat on the table, and looked me in the face. I'm sorry, she said. No preamble, no fancy words. I was wrong. I told myself a story where you were a villain because it made it easier to be the hero of my own. I stole. Then I lied about why it was okay. And when you held up a mirror, I tried to smash the mirror instead of fixing my face. It was the best apology I had ever received because it didn't require me to be noble to accept it. Didn't even ask. It just stood there, a fact, not a performance. Thank you, I said. I accept. She nodded once, like a runner at the starting line who hears the starter's pistol in her head. I'm not asking you to put me back in your will, she added, half a smile messing with the serious moment, because that's how she avoids drowning. I'm asking you to keep answering the door. I can do that, I said. We talked about smaller things after that. School schedules and whether the maple in their yard needed a trim, and how Lucas had discovered he can't cook rice to save his life. I told her about the food pantry and the way the volunteer wrote Ocean View, 30% on a calendar like it was a special day. She said she liked that people in our town still wrote things down where others could see them. When I stood to leave, she picked up the jar of card pieces and handed it to me. For your records, she said, trying the word on like a dress she'd fixed properly this time. For my shelves, I corrected. Not everything in that box is a wound. Some things are bandages. On the porch, Lucas shook my hand again. Unnecessarily and exactly right. Leo ran toward me in that half-run kids use when they're trying to coordinate their legs and their happiness. And I caught him because hands that don't reach for what they love learn to stop reaching at all. Game Thursday, he said into my jacket. We're playing the green team. They don't wash their jerseys. I'll bring clothespins, I said. He laughed like I had given him permission to think I was funny. That's a kind of inheritance, too. Driving home, I didn't turn on the radio. The quiet was specific and earned. The house greeted me with the smell of its air, the honesty of its floorboards, the clock in the hall making a case for time with every click. I set the jar on the mantel, not in the blue box, because it felt less like evidence and more like a sculpture. A thing made from the wreckage of an old mistake. Before bed, I opened the ledger. I wrote fewer lines than I thought I would. Saturday, for 17 p.m. Elara Public Post Admission. Comments off. Sunday 6:12 p.m. Dinner at Elara and Lucas's. Card pieces returned. Jar. Cashier's checks. $2,000 Elara, $2,000 Lucas. Apology given, accepted. Under that, I added a sentence I didn't expect to write. Fixing things is slower than getting revenge and lasts longer. I closed the book, turned off the lamp, and let the house switch to its night voice. Sleep came not like a victory parade, but like a blanket a sensible man pulls over himself because the air has gone honest. Days passed in a way I trusted. The first of the month arrived, and so did the payments. Whispering Pines sent a formal letter closing the file. Ocean View emailed a photo of the pantry line with food steaming in trays, and if I squinted, I could pretend I smelled garlic and promises kept. Samantha at the bank called to say the fraud case had been closed in my favor. But the real win was the lack of any new alerts. People underestimate how good nothing can feel when something keeps knocking you down. A week later, Oliver showed up with Leo and a baseball glove that had seen better summers. He didn't bring an envelope. He brought a question. "You want to come to practice and embarrass me?" he asked. A grin that was losing its defensive job and trying out for honest work. "I'll stand on the fence and keep my opinions to myself," I said. "You can yell one thing," Leo bargained. "Only one. But not about my feet. I know about my feet." "Fine," I said. "I'll yell about gravity." At the field, I let the chain link leave a pattern of diamonds on my hands and watched a boy become a body that understands angles and a father stand next to a son in a silence that didn't need to be fixed. Oliver glanced over once, a question in his eyebrows. I nodded. He nodded back. The scoreboard did what it does, told the truth without being swayed by feelings. I prefer those kinds of machines. On the way home, we passed Whispering Pines. The big oak tree threw its shade onto the driveway like a curtain closing with a gentle hand. I didn't slow down. Some buildings teach you a lesson once and then mind their own business. I do better when I take the lesson and mind my own. That night, a small package arrived on my porch. No return address again, but this one had a stamp. Inside, wrapped in brown paper, was a photo of Alara and Lucas on the garden path. No flowers, just hands and faces that looked like people rather than characters. On the back, in Alara's handwriting, "We earned this one." I set it on the mantel next to the jar. The two looked right together. Confession and putting things back together, like they had both made peace with the part of the story they belonged to. I boiled water, made tea, because the night asked for something quieter than coffee, and took my cup to the porch. The marigolds glowed low and patiently. The banyan held up the sky, which is a job too big for one tree, and somehow trees keep doing it. Across the street, Mrs. Katina's radio played a song Helen loved, and I let it come through the open window without telling the air to turn it down. In my pocket, the old watch ticked like proof. I took it out, clicked it open, and watched the second hand make its humble loop. A man could build a life on that kind of certainty and never once scare the neighbors. My phone buzzed. A message from Alara. "I'm sending the next payment tomorrow. And Dad, thanks for answering the door." I typed back, "Keep knocking. I'll keep opening." I put the phone away. No more words. The porch light turned on when the timer told it to, as if it knew something about timing and light that I had finally caught up to. A car passed, tires making their soft conversation with the road. Somewhere down the block, a screen door shut, and a different house decided it was done with the night. I finished my tea and went inside. On the mantel, the jar caught a sliver of lamplight and turned it into perfect shapes. Next to it, the photo stayed still. Under both, the ledger sat closed, which felt right. Not every day needs a line. Some days you let the picture do the writing. In bed, the sheets were cool and unremarkable, the best kind. I thought about the word that started this whole mess, erased, and how I'd used it like a final decision. Maybe it was more like the eraser at the end of a pencil, something you use on purpose so the next lines are better. I'm not a poet. I'm a man who counted bolts in a warehouse and learned that if you don't make the numbers right, they come back to haunt you. We made some numbers right. We started to make something harder right. The house breathed. The clock kept its promise to the minute. And the watch in my palm, warm from the skin of a man who used to forget he had a heartbeat separate from his family's approval, ticked 2 more times, and then again and again into a kind of quiet that didn't ask for revenge to fix it because it had something stronger. Respect, written in the parts that never go on a card. If there's a lesson anyone gets out of this, it's not that paper wins or that noise loses. It's that you can't be written out of a story you decide to keep writing. I didn't get my daughter back the way she was. I don't want her that way. I got the one who knocked and waited and didn't demand I throw the door open without the hinges I'd built. That's enough. I turned off the lamp. In the dark, the porch light traced its square on the floor.